Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Engineering Statics lecture video. I hope you guys are all doing well and are ready to learn, so let's get started. The first and kind of the big application is moments in equilibrium. Moments allow us to add a third equilibrium equation for 2D scenarios, which is going to be the following. Remember before we said that the summation of forces in the x direction and the summation of forces in the y direction, those must be equal to 0 for our body to remain static. So we had two equations, we can solve for two unknowns. Now, in general equilibrium, we have a third equation in 2D, and that is the sum of the moments at any point must also be equal to 0. Now this is great because instead of two equations, we've upgraded to three, which means that we can actually solve for three unknowns now. And you guys may be saying three unknowns, okay, well that sounds like more work. Well, it is, but it's not too bad in two dimensions. Now, the first quick scenario I can show you that we have three unknowns is this case right here. We talked about this when we talked about support conditions. We said that we had pins and we had rollers. Pins create two unknown forces, a horizontal and a vertical, and rollers create one unknown force, which is vertical. Now, we actually call this type of beam simply supported. And if we look here, there's three unknown forces. So you guys can kind of guess what we're going to be doing in week 6. We can use these three equilibrium equations to solve for these three unknown support conditions. So that's going to be kind of the first thing that we do with moments in in two dimensions. And then the second thing that we're going to do, and that is friction. What is friction? Well, let's go back to our box example. So we have our nice box. We know that it's going to tip about point O, and we're applying a force to this box. Now, the box actually has several other forces on it. So if I were to create a free body diagram, there's other things I have to consider. The first is going to be the weight of the box. It's going to act at the center of the box, and of course it's going to be pulling the box downward. We know that things have a tendency to go downwards due to gravity. So the box is going to have a weight, and then at the bottom of the box there's actually two forces. The first one is a normal force, and this force is basically the reaction of the earth or the structure to keep you guys upwards. Now you guys may be looking at this free body diagram and saying, well, Clayton, why is the normal force acting way over at point O? Well, what we're actually doing is we're considering the effects just before this box starts to tip. So if I were to take the box, at a certain point just before it's about to tip, we see that the one side lifts up and all of that weight transfers to the very corner. This is greatly emphasized, but as we can see, that normal force, the only place it now makes contact is going to be with the corner of the box. And again, if this is something confusing, don't worry. This is a topic we are going to be covering later. Now, the final thing we have, of course, is friction. If I push on something and it is sliding, there's going to be a frictional force trying to counteract that motion. Now, if we were to draw a proper free body diagram, we said that there's two things. The first is all the forces, which we now have. But the second thing, of course, is dimensions. So two dimensions that would be very important to us are going to be the dimension D from point O to our force. And notice how it's perpendicular, as well as dimension B. So again, from point O to our weight force, and again, it's also perpendicular. So this is why free body diagrams are very important. We talked about them, but we talked about particle equilibrium, where we didn't have any lengths. Now, this is why it's so important to include lengths on free body diagrams, because we need to know these distances to create moments. These distances are actually called moment arms. So D here would be the moment arm of P, and B would be the moment arm of W. Now let's use our equilibrium equations to try and analyze what's actually happening with this box. If I were to go to the summation of forces in the y direction, so the vertical direction, I have two forces. We have a normal force, which is going upwards, so it's positive, and we have a weight, which is going downwards, so it's negative. And this makes sense, because if I were to rearrange this, it means that my normal force is equal to my weight. The second one is going to be the summation of forces in the x direction. As we can see, we have two forces. We have an applied force P, which is going to the right, so it's positive, and we have a frictional force, which is going to the left, so it's negative. So if we were to arrange this, we have P is equal to F. Now, we can actually say that if P is greater than F, we actually have sliding. So this is what we're going to do in the frictional case, is we're going to analyze these forces to figure out what's going to happen to this box. Remember, friction is actually capped. Friction does not go up until infinity. It actually has a certain number. But our applied load, we can start exceeding that frictional force. And the moment we exceed it, that's when the box is going to start sliding. Now, the last one we can do is actually the summation of moments about point O. So if we were to look at this, we can say, all right, there's actually going to be two forces that create moments. Notice how the normal force directly goes through point O. So the perpendicular distance is going to be 0. So the normal force N, that creates no moment. Same with the frictional force. I drew it a little bit downwards, but the frictional force actually acts right at the base of the box. So if I were to draw the frictional force, it goes directly through point O. Therefore, the perpendicular distance is 0. Both the frictional force, normal force, they create no moments. The only two that are going to create moments are going to be the applied force P as well as the weight W. So my summation of moments, I would get the following, where I got negative P times D plus W times B is equal to 0. Now, the only thing, again, you guys have to worry about is going to be those signs. So notice how when I go P times D, that's negative. Now, if I were to analyze this case, we have the tipping case. So if P times D is greater than the weight times B, tipping will start to occur. Now, this is actually quite intuitive because if we look at this, we can analyze two things, and that's based on the left side. So if we look on the right side really quick, we have the weight, which is going to stay the same. The box is not going to magically gain weight. We got B, which is just the dimension to the midpoint of the box. That's not going to change. So the whole right-hand side, it's actually constant. It's not going to change. If we look at the left-hand side, we can actually modify this to increase it so that tipping occurs. We can do it two ways. One, increase the amount of force that we apply on the box, or increase the height of that moment arm. And that makes sense, right? If I want to tip something over, let's say I want to tip my computer over, I'm not going to apply my force at the bottom of the computer. I'm going to apply my force at the top because it's much easier to tip at the top than it is at the bottom. Now, if we were to look at the increasing P, we can say, yeah, increasing P would lead to tipping, but if we increase P, we might actually activate that first case, which is sliding. So that's something to be aware of, is increasing P may not actually make the box tip, it might actually make it slide before it tips. So the best way to make something tip, increase the moment arm. The best example of this, doors. Why do you think door handles are as far away from the hinges as possible? Because if they were close to the hinge, we don't create a lot of moment. Doors become a lot harder to open. If you guys know those like push doors, if you guys apply the force really close to the hinges, it's a lot harder to open than when you guys go to the outer edges of the door. So yeah, that's moments in 2D. Again, the applications of equilibrium, this is something we're going to be discussing a lot later on, so don't worry about it too much. It was just kind of an example to show you guys what's going on and what we're actually going to do with it. So the final thing we're going to talk about, and this isn't something that we usually find in this particular class because it's a first year class. We're here to have fun, not make you guys depressed. And that is this, moments in equilibrium. So remember in 2D moments, we said that taking the summation of moments adds a third equilibrium equation. Well, in 3D, it actually adds 3 more equilibrium equations. So for 3D equilibrium, we actually have 6 equations now. The summation of forces in each direction, so I, J, K, or X, Y, Z, they must all be equal to 0. But the summation of moments around every axis, so X-axis, Y-axis, and the Z-axis, they must also be equal to 0. So this actually allows us to solve for 6 equations with 6 unknowns. So again, we can solve for 6 unknowns with this bad boy. The reason why we don't see it is because solving for 6 unknowns, it's absolutely gross. No one wants to do it. No one wants to mark it, so even the profs are scared of it. But if you guys were doing this and you guys were talking about resultant moments, because again, we're talking about the summation of moments, the question becomes, how do we get resultant moments in a system? And this is something that you guys could be asked just to find a resultant moment. Not solve unknowns, but just find a resultant moment. Well, it's actually very simple using a very specific theorem called Varignon's theorem. I'm not sure if I say that correctly, but the theorem states that the resultant moment about a point is equal to the sum of the moments of the force components about the same point. And this is where I lost you guys. You guys think, Clayton, I don't really know what this means. Well, it's actually very simple. This statement right here basically says that if we have 2 different moment vectors and we want the resultant, we can just add them together, just like force vectors. Remember, force vectors, if we had 3 different force vectors, we wanted the resultant, just add the components together. The exact same thing for moments. So if I had two moment vectors, m1 and m2, and they're about the same point. So here's the key here. They have to be about the same point. All I need to do to find the resultant moments, adding them together, is just add the components. So I see that I have negative 2i and I have 4i. So I add them together. I see that I have 6j, negative 1j, just add them together, and I get my resultant moments. Now the key here, and this is what's going to kind of get us ready for next video, is the key here is that both of these moments that I added together, they were about the exact same point. They're both about point O. In the next video, we're going to discuss the idea that what happens if I have two different moments, a moment about point 1 and a moment about point 2. Or let's say that I have two different forces, a force about point 1, a force about point 2. So they're on separate sides. How can we get the resultant moments in cases like that? So that's going to be its own separate topic, which we're going to be going over next video. With that being said, that's the end of this video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you guys in the next lecture video.